And those 5 different iframes had pre-populated HTML forms. And those forms, once submitted in order by the script, did these things. Those went to the bank site as the user and changed the user's email notification setting. It then associated a new checking account, which happened to be our checking account, to that user's online account. And then it performed a balance transfer saying, hey, please send a check to this new checking account. And then it deleted the checking account and then changed the user's email notification back. All there was the log that it happened, and the $5,000 had gone away. It's probably easier to understand if we look at a nice little graphic, right? So on the left, that's the guy's browser. I'm not going to tell you the brand of browser. It turns out basically all browsers are vulnerable to these attacks. This is part of the web. It's not really a browser vuln. And the guy already has ticker.stockbroker.com as a window that he has open, and it's got Java running in it, and he's got a cookie there, right? That's a cookie that's valid because he put his login in and he got the cookie back. So he goes to cybervillains.com and asks for the news site, and we say, yes, here's the news site. And so the news site gets rendered in his browser, and while he's reading the excellent story, he doesn't notice those 5 iframes, right? Those are those little dotted lines, those iframes that exist on the site in the script. And so those iframes, all they do is they point against stockbroker.com and they say submit. And it does 5 in a row, and there's a nice little timer to make sure that they happen in time. Why are they able to do this? They're able to do this because these requests have predictable information in them, right? They're HTTP posts that have things like, if I do a post against /transfer, and then all I need is an amount and the number of the checking account that it goes to, and then those are kinds of things that are predictable by an attacker, right? The way this attack really works really well is if this website that this guy reads works for anybody that goes to stockbroker.com, right? I'm not targeting an individual person. It just happens to be that all the stockbroker.com needs from you to do something on your behalf is your cookie and the request parameters. And all the request parameters are nice and very predictable. So this is Web 1.0. This exists right now. This is a bug all over the place. Nobody really understands it. And it's horrible. And like I said, if somebody figured out, say, they looked at the top 10 online stockbrokers, and they figured out that 4 or 5 of them have cross-site request forgery, and then they wrote a page that targeted all 4 or 5, and then they posted that page on Yahoo Finance during the day, where you're pretty much guaranteed that half the people are logged into those top 10, 4 or 5, the 4 or 5 of those top 10 browsers, then you might be able to steal a lot of money in one afternoon. So the moral of the story, like I said, it used HTML form posts, although gets are even worse. It filled those forms with easily guessed information. It used a cookie, which is what the security community has been telling people forever. Use cookies, don't use hidden fields. Well, we've kind of been lying to them, right, all these days. Sorry about that on behalf of the security community. There's nothing random or encrypted, and there's really, they had a long lifetime cookie that existed because, this is really a probabilistic attack that the guy clicked on the link or clicked on the link in his email or clicked on the link on yahoo.finance.com while his cookie was valid. And this is probably about the worst case scenario, and unfortunately this kind of worst case scenario you see a lot. So in Ajax, what's different? Well, in some ways this is better, in some ways it's worse. It's better because XML HTTP, the things like cross-site form posting, anybody know why that can't be fixed? Why that can't go away? Anybody want to hazard a guess to what kind of things absolutely require cross-site posting to work? Not ads, but we'll talk about ads in a second, but thank you for the... Anybody? Why do you think that HTTP cross-site HTML forms are allowed? Not mashups. It's something much more simple. You ever gone to your bank, and then you logged into your bank, and then all of a sudden you went to your CheckPay site, and the CheckPay site's checkpay.com, and the bank is bank.com, right? How do you ever wonder how checkpay.com knew who you were? It's because when you did that, bank.com had an iframe that did a cross-site post to checkpay.com with some kind of SAML token or some kind of encrypted cookie, and then they responded with a cookie that got set, so when you went to checkpay.com, you had a valid cookie that authenticated you. All cross-domain single sign-ons, almost all of them require this to work, and so it'll never get fixed. So fortunately, though, when Microsoft created the XML HTTP request object, and then Firefox copied it, or Mozilla and everybody else copied it, they were able to start from scratch, right? And so they're able to start from scratch, and they had a very simple security statement, which was, we are not going to let XML HTTP talk to anybody but my document.domain. Document.domain being a variable in the DOM, right? And document.domain is initially set when it comes down to the server that gives you the page, right? It can be reset by JavaScript, but you're only supposed to be able to set it to things that are in your up to the second level domain, right? So if I'm coming from www.bank.com and I'm script, I should only be able to change my document.domain to bank.com. That actually is a flaw. I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but who here in their company is at somebody's desktop, you know, bobsdesktop.corp.company.com? Okay, well, it's everybody in here, right? Almost everybody has domain DNS names that are given out dynamically. Well, what happens if you go to a website on your friend Bob's computer, and then his script comes down, it sets the document.domain, and now it's able to interact with actual company.com, and company.com happens to also have your 401k, because you work at a company that does 401ks, right? So that is kind of a flaw too, but generally XML HTTP object isn't that bad, right? And it only allows communication with the origination server. But the ways Ajax are worse from XSRF is that like the kinds of things that people get automatic protections against XRF are things like the ASP.NET view state parameter, or things like wizards that are created by their Java web servers. You know, it's big tokens that come down that are encrypted and aren't predictable, that are for multi-state forms. Those kinds of things give them protection, even though they didn't know about it. But in Ajax, you don't have that, right? Because the whole idea is all the calls are asynchronous. So people will probably go through and they try really hard not to have dependencies like that. Many frameworks use gets for doing RPCs. In the HTTP stack, gets are only supposed to be for retrieving information, not for setting information. But somebody didn't read the spec before they wrote, you know, everybody doesn't read the entire spec before they write their web app, which is a big surprise. And so gets actually often do things that are important. And sites that return valid JavaScript are very, very vulnerable. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Why are they vulnerable? Well, there's a thing you can do called a dynamic script node. Now, this is script that's running in that cybervillains.com news story, right? And in that cybervillains.com news story, let's say that stockbroker.com has a nice little Ajax app, right? And so in that script, what I do is I actually create a script element on the fly by writing it into the DOM. And then I point that script at stockbroker.com. Why is that allowed? Somebody said it earlier. John? Advertising, yes. Has anybody ever looked at how AdWords works, or how Google Analytics works, or Yahoo ads work? They all this tracking works because you can source a script that comes from somebody else, and you get it, and that source sends the cookie, the tracking cookie, right? Because they don't use images anymore, right? Because you can use image tags to do this, right? Because image tags send cookie. That's how DoubleClick used to do it. But now they want lots more rich information. You ever wonder how Google Analytics knows if you have Flash installed? Right? That's not stuff that comes down in the referrer header. It comes down because they're able to send you a script tag that comes with your Google Analytics cookie, and it also comes with all the script stuff that they're able to get, right? So lots of people use cross-site, I'm not going to say it's cross-site scripting, but cross-site script sourcing to make things work. And so I take my script tag, and I run it, and I source it from somewhere else. Well, why do I care, right? Like, why do you know, nobody really cares about image tags. I mean, I can get an image from anywhere. Why do I already care about script? Well, when this was originally thought of, the whole idea of script was there's a big static thing that came down and did your stupid drop-down menus, right? Not that it was something that did something important and actually contained important information. And this is a real quote from a web application person. If you go around and you do research on cross-site stuff with Ajax, you'll learn that the web development community, the people that go to places like Web 2.0 conference or South by Southwest or all these cool Web 2, they think that the UN and the security community have gone together to take away their God-given right to cross-site HTTP request, right? Because they can't do things like Housing Maps has to, you know, do all this crazy stuff so that they can get Craigslist and Google. You have to go through Housing Maps for them to grab that stuff. Well, they want to be able just to go straight to Google and go straight to Housing Maps, right? Or Craigslist and actually just mash it up because it saves them a lot in bandwidth, right? And so they're so pissed about it. They're so pissed that XML HTTP request has all these security flaws. They have no idea why. And this quote is an example of, shh, I know a security hole, but don't tell anybody because we don't want it to get fixed, right? Because it's really useful for my stupid mashup site, right? Well, it turns out that's also going to be able to own up banks and stuff by doing this. Because say that script that comes back in your Ajax app is a valuable JavaScript, and it calls a callback function. So if I'm a bad guy, all I do is I create a script node, I source it somewhere else, and when that script comes back, It does a callback to something, and I accept that callback, and in a very friendly way say, yes, I do have that function you're calling, right? So in this example, maybe it's webmail.com, and when you ask for, you ask for the inbox, they send out JavaScript that calls these functions, add message, add message, add message, which then goes through and adds the message into the DHTML. Well, if I'm the attacker, all I have to do is create an add message function, and when that comes back, it calls my function, and my function gets all that data cross-site. And now I can just take that data and send it via a source or an image tag back to cybervillains.com, right? So what's the end result? If webmail.com does this, if they come to cybervillains.com and they have a webmail.com cookie, I can read all the messages in their inbox. It's two-way cross-site request forgery. It's a complete break of the browser security model. And it turns out that even if you're not just doing callbacks, if you're doing things like declaring new arrays and stuff like that, you can grab that. And Jeremiah Grossman had a great little trick where he overrides the array constructor and then uses the array constructor to get that data out. You can do the same thing with JSON, because JSON could just be evaled. This is bad. And it turns out this is in almost all of the Ajax frameworks. And we have a tool that does this, but I think we're running out of time, so I'll demo it to a small group later, or you can probably come download it off isecpartners.com later, as soon as I can get off of the BlackHat wireless network and upload it from something a little more trusted than no network in Clark County, I think, is trusted this week, actually. So what is the XSRF lessons in Ajax? Your application may be in trouble if your requests are guessable, right? If there's stuff in your request that's not personalized to you, then somebody else can guess what they are and blindly ask for them. If the requests are formatted as gets, gets are really bad. Posts, you can do the iframe trick, but you can do gets in a lot of different ways, and it's a lot easier to do things like brute force many gets. If gets requests return valid JavaScript, you're probably toast. How do you fix this? Well, there's a couple ways. One, if your framework wants to take a JavaScript down and then execute it, what you should do is put a bunch of garbage in front of it, and then have your XML HTTP request, make the request, pull that garbage off, and then eval what's left. And because that garbage comes down, you might be able to get around this problem. It turns out there's a bunch of different things, because the script element is a very, very featured object, and it has all these different methods that you can probably get a lot of stuff as an attacker out of it, and we're working on some of those things too. And if your request can be formatted in HTML form, a lot of Ajax apps still do all of their data in things that look like normal HTTP form posts. What's the future? Well, if the web developers get their way, XSRF is going to get a lot worse. And so just as an experiment, go Google for cross-domain XHR, right? And you're not going to see any discussion about security. You're just going to see bitch and moan about the security people won't let us have our XML HTTP request. This is the, yeah. And then up here it says Safari already allows cross-domain Ajax. Thank you, Apple. So on behalf of the BlackHat community, I'd like to say thank you, Apple. I'm not going to talk about that at all, but yeah. So Zane's going to talk about how you do this stuff in Flash.
So since there are all those restrictions on the XML HTTP object, why not bypass it with Flash? So that's what some web developers thought anyway. With Flash 6.0, basically you can go to arbitrary sites and bypass those restrictions. Those restrictions are configurable by a policy file they decided, which is going to be crossdomain.xml. With the introduction of Flash 6, by default it matched your top level domains. So foo.example.com could talk to bar.example.com, but not bar.cybervillains.com. So the policy file, we've got an example one up there, and what more often it looks like. It allows wildcards, which is great for us.